I was in the middle of sorting out the laundry when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Harper, and her voice sounded odd, almost frantic. "Mia, can you come over? I need to talk to you." "It's important," she said, her voice shaking. "Of course." "I'll be there in 10 minutes," I replied, my heart sinking a little. Harper and I had been best friends since childhood, and I knew her well enough to sense that something was seriously wrong. I arrived at Harper's place, knocking on the door gently. She opened it almost immediately, her face pale and eyes red from crying. "Harper, what's going on?" "You're scaring me," I said, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. We sat down on her worn-out sofa, the one we used to sit on for hours, chatting about everything and nothing. But this time there was a heavy tension in the air. "I don't know how to say this," Harper began, her voice barely a whisper, "but I need to tell you the truth. I can't keep it a secret any longer." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Just tell me, Harper. Whatever it is, we can deal with it together." She took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. "Mia, I had a child with Elijah." I stared at her, stunned. "What are you talking about? How is that possible?" "It happened years ago," Harper continued, her voice trembling. "We were all at that barbecue at your place. You had a bit too much to drink and went to bed early. Elijah and I stayed up, talking. One thing led to another, and it just happened. Emily is his daughter." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. "How could you do this to me, Harper? To us? And why are you telling me now?" "Because I couldn't live with the lie anymore," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Especially now. Mia, I'm sick. I have cancer. I've been fighting it for 2 years, and I don't know how much time I have left. I needed you to know the truth." The anger and hurt surged through me, but looking at Harper, frail and broken, my heart softened. We had shared everything since we were kids. Could I really turn my back on her now? I don't know what to say," I stammered, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions. "I trusted you, Harper. How could you?" "I'm so sorry, Mia," she whispered. "I was drunk, stupid, and it was a mistake. But Emily is innocent in all this. She doesn't know. Please, for her sake, don't hate me." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Harper, but I know I can't leave you alone in this. You need help, and Emily needs someone to care for her." Harper nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, Mia. I don't deserve your kindness, but I promise I'll make it up to you." I nodded, standing up. "We'll figure this out. But it's going to take time. I need some space to process everything." As I left Harper's house, my mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Betrayed by my best friend and my husband, I didn't know how I would face Elijah. But one thing was clear: Harper needed me now more than ever, and despite everything, I couldn't abandon her. I drove home in a daze, Harper's confession replaying in my mind like a broken record. How could she? How could Elijah? I felt like I was suffocating, each breath a struggle as I tried to hold back the tears. When I finally walked through the front door, Elijah was sitting on the couch, watching TV. "Hey, how was Harper?" he asked, looking up at me with a smile that quickly faded when he saw my face. "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He muted the TV and turned to face me. "What's wrong, Mia? You're scaring me." Harper told me everything, I said, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "About Emily. About you and her." "Huh." Elijah's face went pale. "Mia, it's not what you think." "Not what I think. I cut him off. She had your child, Elijah. How could you do this to me? To us?" He stood up, reaching out to me. "Mia, please let me explain. It was a mistake. It happened once, and I've regretted it every day since." I stepped back, not wanting him to touch me. "A mistake? You slept with my best friend, and she had your child. That's more than just a mistake." "I was drunk, Mia," he pleaded. "We both were. It didn't mean anything. I love you. Only you." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I trusted you, Elijah. I trusted both of you. And now, I don't even know what to think. He sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. I've been carrying this guilt for so long. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Harper is sick. She's been battling cancer for 2 years. That's why she told me now. She couldn't keep it a secret any longer. Elijah looked up, shock and concern etched on his face. Cancer? I had no idea. God, Mia, what are we going to do? I don't know, I admitted, my voice breaking, but I promised her I would help. For Emily's sake, if nothing else. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Just tell me what to do. I need time, Elijah, I said, feeling the weight of his betrayal crushing me. Time to think, to process everything. And I need you to stay away from Harper. She's my friend, and she needs me right now, not you. He swallowed hard, nodding. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll do anything to earn your trust back. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was too shattered, my mind too overwhelmed. I turned and walked upstairs to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. I sank onto the bed, burying my face in my hands as the tears finally came, hot and heavy. How had my life come to this? My best friend and my husband, betraying me in the worst possible way. And now Harper was dying. It was too much to handle all at once. But deep down, I knew I had to find a way. For Emily, for Harper, and for myself. The next few days passed in a blur. I avoided Elijah as much as possible, burying myself in work and focusing on Harper's needs. We set up a schedule for her treatments, and I made sure she had everything she needed at home. Emily spent more time at our house, playing with my kids, blissfully unaware of the storm raging around her. One evening, as I was tucking Emily into bed, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. Aunt Mia, is Mummy going to get better? I forced a smile, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. We're doing everything we can to make sure she does, sweetheart. She nodded, satisfied with my answer, and snuggled into her pillow. I love you, Aunt Mia. I love you too, Emily, I whispered, kissing her forehead. As I closed the door to her room, I leaned against the wall, letting out a shaky breath. I had to stay strong for Emily's sake, for Harper's sake, but inside I felt like I was falling apart. Late that night I sat alone in the kitchen, a cup of tea growing cold in my hands. The house was silent, everyone else asleep. I replayed Harper's confession in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. Could I ever truly forgive her, or Elijah? And even if I could, what would that mean for our future? One thing was clear: I needed to confront Harper again, to ask the questions that had been gnawing at me since that fateful confession. I needed closure, one way or another. With a deep breath, I set my tea down and headed upstairs to bed. Tomorrow would be another difficult day, but I was determined to face it head on. For better or worse, the truth had to come out. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind already buzzing with the weight of the day ahead. I had decided to visit Harper at her place. There were so many things we needed to talk about, and I needed answers. When I arrived at her apartment, I found her sitting on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. She looked even more fragile in the morning light, her skin pale and her eyes tired. "Hey," I said softly, stepping out onto the balcony. She looked up and managed a weak smile. "Hey Mia, come sit with me." I pulled up a chair and sat down next to her. For a moment we just sat there in silence, the cool morning air wrapping around us. "How are you feeling today?" I asked, breaking the silence. Harper sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Some days are better than others. Today is one of the bad ones." "Tell me about it," I said gently. "Tell me everything." She took a deep breath, her eyes glazing over as she stared into the distance. "It started 2 years ago. I was feeling exhausted all the time, more than usual. I thought it was just stress from work, from being a single mom. But then I started getting these terrible pains in my bones. I went to the doctor, and after a lot of tests, they diagnosed me with multiple myeloma. It's a type of cancer that affects the bone marrow. I felt a lump form in my throat. Why didn't you tell me, Harper? I would have been there for you. I didn't want to burden you, she said, her voice cracking. You already have so much on your plate with your kids and your job. And ... I was ashamed. Ashamed of what happened with Elijah. I thought if I kept it to myself, maybe I could pretend it never happened. But it did happen, I said, my voice firmer than I intended. And now we have to deal with it. Together. Harper nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Mia. I've made so many mistakes and I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to make up for. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, I said, reaching out to take her hand. But we'll figure it out. One step at a time. She squeezed my hand, a small flicker of hope in her eyes. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. We sat there for a while longer, just holding hands and taking in the morning light. Eventually, Harper's doctor arrived for a house call, and I stayed to talk with him. Doctor. Reed, how is she really doing? I asked after he finished examining Harper. He looked at me with a serious expression. Harper's condition is serious, but not hopeless. She's responded well to the chemotherapy so far, but it's a tough battle. The next few months will be critical. She needs support, both physically and emotionally. I'll be here, I promised. Whatever she needs, I'll make sure she gets it. Good, doctor, Reed said, nodding. She's lucky to have a friend like you. As he left, I returned to Harper's side. We'll get through this, I said, determination in my voice. One day at a time. She nodded, a faint smile on her lips. One day at a time. Over the next few weeks, I rearranged my life to be there for Harper. I took her to her chemotherapy sessions, sat with her during the long hours of treatment, and made sure she had nutritious meals. I spent time with Emily, helping her with homework and making sure she felt loved and secure. One afternoon, while Harper was resting, Emily and I sat at the kitchen table, colouring. Aunt Mia, is Mummy going to be okay? Emily asked, her voice small and uncertain. I paused, choosing my words carefully. The doctors are doing everything they can to help her get better. And we're going to be here to support her every step of the way. Emily nodded, a determined look on her face. I want to help too. Can I make Mummy a get well card? Of course, sweetheart, I said, smiling. That would be wonderful. As we worked on the card together, I realized how much Emily reminded me of Harper, strong, resilient, and full of love. It made me even more determined to help Harper fight this illness. One evening, as I was tidying up after dinner, Harper called me into the living room. She looked better than she had in days, a small spark of life in her eyes. Mia, I've been thinking, she said, her voice stronger. I want to write letters to Emily, just in case ... you know, in case I don't make it. I felt a lump form in my throat but nodded. That's a good idea, Harper. I'll help you with it. We spent the next few hours writing letters, Harper pouring her heart out onto the pages. It was emotional and exhausting, but also cathartic. By the end, we were both in tears, but it felt like a weight had been lifted. Thank you, Mia, Harper said, hugging me tightly. For everything. Always, I whispered, hugging her back. I'm here for you. No matter what. In those moments, despite the pain and the betrayal, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were facing this battle together, and that made all the difference. The days blurred into weeks as Harper's treatment progressed. My routine shifted to accommodate her needs and Emily's, and I found myself juggling my job, my kids, and Harper's care. It was exhausting, but I couldn't let her face this battle alone. One morning I arrived at Harper's apartment with groceries. She was sitting at the kitchen table, looking pale but determined. Morning, Harper. I brought you some fresh fruits and veggies, I said, setting the bags on the counter. You're a lifesaver, Mia. I've been craving strawberries, she replied with a weak smile. Good, because I got plenty, I said, unloading the groceries. How are you feeling today? Better, I think she said, trying to sound optimistic. The nausea isn't as bad today. I nodded, glad to hear some good news. That's great. How's Emily doing? She's at school. She's been a trooper through all this, Harper said, her eyes misting up. I'm so proud of her. She's a strong kid, just like her mum, I said, giving her a reassuring smile. As I finished putting away the groceries, Harper's phone rang. She glanced at it and sighed. It's the hospital, probably calling about my next chemo session. I'll get it, I offered, picking up the phone. After a brief conversation with the nurse, I hung up and turned to Harper. They want you to come in tomorrow morning for your next round. Harper nodded, a flicker of anxiety crossing her face. Thanks, Mia. I hate these sessions, but I know they're necessary. We'll get through it, I said firmly. I'll be there with you, like always. The next morning, I picked up Harper and drove her to the hospital. We sat in the waiting room, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling the air. Harper fidgeted with her hands and I reached over to squeeze them. It's going to be okay, I said softly. I know, she replied, her voice shaky. I just hate feeling so helpless. You're not helpless. You're fighting this, and you're not alone, I reminded her. When it was time for her treatment, I sat by her side, holding her hand as the nurses set up the IV. Harper leaned back in the chair, closing her eyes as the medication began to flow. Tell me a story, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A story, I asked, surprised. Yeah, something to take my mind off this, she explained. I thought for a moment, then began to recount a funny memory from our childhood. Remember that time we decided to camp out in your backyard? Harper's eyes opened, a small smile playing on her lips. Oh yeah, we thought we were so adventurous. And then we got scared by the raccoon and ran screaming back into the house, I continued, laughing. Harper laughed too, the sound a bit strained but genuine. I miss those days. We had some good times, I agreed, and we'll have more. We just have to get through this. The treatment took a few hours, and I stayed with Harper the whole time, chatting and keeping her spirits up. By the time it was over, she was exhausted, but there was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Thank you, Mia, she said as I helped her into the car. I couldn't do this without you. You don't have to thank me, I said, starting the car. We're in this together. As we drove home, I thought about how much had changed in such a short time. My life had been turned upside down by Harper's illness and the revelation about Elijah, but in the midst of it all, our friendship had grown stronger. I was determined to see this through, no matter what. At home, I made sure Harper was comfortable before heading to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Emily arrived home from school, her face lighting up when she saw me. Aunt Mia, did you bring more of those cookies? She asked excitedly. I sure did, I said, pulling a box of her favorite cookies from the cupboard. Emily hugged me tightly. You're the best. No, you're the best, I replied, hugging her back. How was school today? It was good. We're learning about space, she said, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Did you know that some stars are bigger than the sun? I did know that. Isn't it amazing, I said, smiling. Emily nodded, then glanced towards the living room where her mum was resting. Is Mummy going to be okay? I knelt down to her level, looking into her earnest eyes. We're doing everything we can to make sure she gets better, and you're helping a lot by being so brave and strong. Emily nodded, a determined look on her face. I'll keep being strong. For Mummy. That's my girl, I said, giving her a kiss on the forehead. Later that evening, after dinner and homework, I tucked Emily into bed. She hugged her favourite stuffed animal, a worn-out bunny named Mr. Fluffles. Good night, Aunt Mia. I love you, she said, her eyes already closing. I love you too, Emily. Sleep tight, I whispered, turning off the light and closing the door quietly. I went back to the living room where Harper was dozing on the couch. I covered her with a blanket and sat down beside her, watching her breathe softly. My heart ached for my friend, but I knew we had to keep fighting. For Harper, for Emily, and for the bond we shared that had weathered so many storms. As I finally went to bed that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. Despite the challenges, we were making it through one day at a time, and as long as we had each other, I knew we could face whatever came next. Harper's health was slowly improving, and we were all hopeful. She had more good days than bad ones now, and it felt like we were turning a corner. I was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, when I heard a soft knock on the door. It was Harper. "Hey, come on in," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. "Dinner's almost ready." Harper stepped inside, but she didn't sit down. There was a strange look in her eyes, one I couldn't quite place. "Mia, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but serious. I turned off the stove and faced her. "Sure, what's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I've been thinking a lot about my future. About Emily's future." "Of course," I said, trying to be supportive. "What do you need? You know I'm here for you." She looked down, then back up at me, her eyes filled with an intensity I hadn't seen before. "I need you to let Elijah go." I blinked, not sure I'd heard her right. "What do you mean?" "I want to spend whatever time I have left with him," she said, her voice firm. "I need to be happy, Mia. I need to feel loved. And Elijah. He makes me feel that way." I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. "Harper, you can't be serious. Elijah is my husband. We have a family." "I know it sounds crazy, but I can't help how I feel," she continued, stepping closer. "Please, Mia, I'm asking you as a friend. Let me have this." Anger and hurt surged through me. "After everything we've been through, you're asking me to give up my husband. Do you even hear yourself?" "I know it's a lot to ask," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "But I don't have much time left. Can't you do this one thing for me?" I shook my head, feeling a mix of disbelief and betrayal. "You're asking too much, Harper. I've supported you through your illness, taken care of Emily, but this, I can't do this." "Think about Emily," she said desperately. "She deserves to know her father." "Emily will always be taken care of, whether by you, me, or Elijah," I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. "But I won't destroy my family for this." Harper's face crumpled, and she sank into a chair. "I'm sorry, Mia. I didn't want it to come to this, but I had to try. I'm scared, and I just want to feel like I have something real, something to hold on to." I felt a pang of sympathy, but the hurt overshadowed it. "Harper, I love you, and I understand you're scared. But Elijah is my husband. I can't just hand him over like some object." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I understand. I had to ask, but I understand." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I think you should go home, Harper. We both need some time to think." She nodded slowly, standing up and walking towards the door. "I'm sorry, Mia, for everything." I watched her leave, the door closing softly behind her. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. How could she ask something so impossible? And yet, I knew she was desperate, grasping for anything to make her feel alive again. Elijah walked in, looking concerned. "What's going on?" I heard raised voices. I turned to him, my eyes filled with tears. "Harper. She asked me to give you up, to let her spend her remaining time with you." Elijah's face went pale. "What? That's insane. Mia, you know I love you. Only you." "I know," I said, wiping away my tears. "But this whole situation has made everything so complicated. I don't know what to think anymore." He stepped closer, taking my hands in his. "We'll get through this, Mia, together. I promise you." I looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. We have to be strong, Elijah. For our family. He nodded, pulling me into a tight embrace. We will be. I'm not going anywhere. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Harper's demand. I understood her desperation, but it didn't make the request any less hurtful. Our friendship had already been through so much, and now this. The next day I went to visit Harper again. I needed to set things straight, to make sure she understood where we stood. When I arrived, she was sitting on the couch, looking lost in thought. She looked up as I entered, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Harper, we need to talk, I said, sitting down across from her. She nodded, waiting for me to speak. I understand that you're scared and that you want to make the most of the time you have left, I began. But asking me to give up Elijah, that's not fair to any of us, especially not to Emily. She looked down, tears falling onto her hands. I know. I'm sorry, Mia. I was being selfish. I don't know what to do anymore. We'll figure it out, I said gently. But we have to respect each other's boundaries. We're all hurting, but we need to support each other, not tear each other apart. She nodded, sniffling. You're right. I'll respect your decision. I just want Emily to have a family. And she will, I assured her. We're all here for her, but we have to find a way to make it work without sacrificing our relationships. Harper reached out and took my hand. Thank you, Mia. For everything, I'll try to be better. We'll get through this, I said, squeezing her hand, one day at a time. As I left her apartment, I felt a sense of relief. We still had a long way to go, but at least we had taken a step towards healing. Harper's demand had been a shock, but it had also brought to light the depth of her fear and desperation. And in understanding that, I found a way to forgive her, just a little bit more. The days that followed Harper's unexpected demand were some of the hardest of my life. I wrestled with my emotions, trying to find a path forward that made sense. The betrayal I felt from both Harper and Elijah was like a constant ache, but I knew I had to make a decision. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat down with Elijah in the living room. The house was quiet. The only sound was the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Elijah, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but firm. He looked up from his book, his eyes filled with worry. Of course, Mia. What's on your mind? I've been thinking a lot about what Harper asked. About everything that's happened, I began, taking a deep breath. I can't keep living like this, with all this pain and uncertainty. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away gently. Mia, I know I've hurt you. I'm so sorry, but I love you, and I want to make things right. I believe you, I said, looking into his eyes, but trust is fragile, Elijah, and right now it's shattered. I need to do what's best for me and the kids. What are you saying? He asked, his voice trembling. I'm saying we need to separate, I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. At least for a while. I need time to heal, to figure out what I want. He looked devastated, tears welling up in his eyes. Mia, please don't do this. We can work through it together. I need space. Elijah, I said firmly, this isn't just about you and Harper. It's about me finding myself again, finding my strength. He nodded slowly, wiping away a tear. If that's what you need, I'll give it to you. But please know that I'm not giving up on us. I know, I said softly. And I'm not saying it's over forever. But right now, this is what I need. We sat in silence for a while, the reality of the situation sinking in. Eventually, Elijah stood up and walked to the door. I'll find a place to stay, he said, his voice heavy with sadness. I'll come by to see the kids if that's okay. Of course, I replied, my heart aching. They need their father. He nodded, then left the house, closing the door quietly behind him. I sat there for a long time, the silence around me feeling both liberating and terrifying. The next morning, I called Harper and asked her to meet me at our favorite coffee shop. When I arrived, she was already there, nervously stirring a cup of tea. "Mia," she said as I sat down. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I replied, taking a deep breath. I made a decision. "I've asked Elijah to move out for a while." Her eyes widened in surprise. "You're separating?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I need time to heal and figure out what I want, and I can't do that with him here." "I'm so sorry, Mia," she said, tears filling her eyes. "This is all my fault." "It's not just your fault," I said gently. "We all made mistakes, but now it's time to move forward." She nodded, wiping her tears. "What can I do to help?" "Just focus on getting better," I said. "And be there for Emily. She needs you." "I will," she promised. "And I'll do whatever I can to support you too." "Thank you," I said, feeling a sense of peace. "We'll get through this, one day at a time." In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and my children. I started seeing a therapist who helped me process my feelings and begin to heal. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right path. One evening, after a long day at work, I received a call from Harper. She sounded better, stronger. "Mia, I wanted to thank you," she said, "for everything. I'm feeling better, and I've been spending a lot of time with Emily. It's helping." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, smiling. "How's Emily doing?" "She's doing well," Harper replied. "She misses you and the kids, though." "We miss her too," I said. "Maybe we can arrange a play date soon." "I'd like that," Harper said. "And Mia, I want you to know that I respect your decision. I'm here for you, whatever you need." "Thank you, Harper," I said, feeling a wave of gratitude. "We'll figure this out together." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of hope. It was a long road ahead, but I was taking the steps I needed to heal and rebuild my life. One day at a time, I was finding my strength, and I knew that no matter what, I had the support of those who truly cared about me. The separation was hard on everyone, but we were adjusting. Elijah found a small apartment nearby and visited the kids regularly. One evening, after he had taken the kids out for ice cream, he asked if we could talk. We sat in the living room, the house feeling emptier without the usual noise of our children. Elijah looked tired, his face etched with worry. "Mia, I need you to understand something," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I never had an affair with Harper." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Elijah," she admitted it. "She told me everything." "She's confused, Mia," he said, his eyes pleading. "Yes, we made a mistake that night, but it was one time, and it meant nothing. I was drunk, she was drunk, and it just happened. But it's not what you think." I shook my head, frustration boiling inside me. "You expect me to believe that? After everything, how can I trust you?" He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "Because it's the truth. I've been faithful to you, Mia. I've made mistakes, but I've never had an ongoing affair with Harper." I wanted to believe him, but the wound was still raw. "Elijah, you kept it a secret for years. How can I trust anything you say?" He ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was ashamed, and I didn't want to hurt you. But I've never loved anyone but you." I looked down at my hands, the weight of his words pressing on my heart. "It's not just about the affair, Elijah. It's about everything. The trust, the lies, the betrayal. How do we move past that?" He reached out, taking my hand gently. "We take it one day at a time. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I love you, Mia. I want to make this work." I looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. There was sincerity there, a deep regret that matched my own pain. "I don't know if I can do this, Elijah. I don't know if I can forgive you." "You don't have to decide now," he said softly. "Just give me a chance to prove myself. That's all I'm asking." I pulled my hand away, needing space to think. "I need time, Elijah. This isn't something that can be fixed overnight." He nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting. I'm not giving up on us, Mia. As he left, I felt a mixture of relief and confusion. His words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. The next day, I met with Harper at a park. Emily and my kids were playing on the swings while we sat on a bench, watching them. "Harper, we need to talk," I said, breaking the silence. She turned to me, her eyes cautious. "What is it, Mia?" "Elijah came over last night," I began, choosing my words carefully. "He's denying that there was ever an affair. He says what happened was a one-time mistake." Harper looked down, guilt flashing across her face. "He's right. It was a mistake, Mia. I was confused and I let my emotions get the better of me." I stared at her, trying to process her words. "So you've been lying to me? All this time?" "No, not lying," she said quickly. "Just confused. I thought maybe there was more to it because of how I felt, but Elijah never led me on. He's always loved you." I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. "Do you have any idea what this has done to me? To my family?" Tears welled up in Harper's eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I never meant to cause this much pain. I was scared and lonely, and I made a terrible mistake." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I don't know how to move forward from this, Harper. I don't know if I can forgive either of you." She reached out, touching my arm gently. "I understand, but please know that I never wanted to hurt you. I value our friendship too much." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. I need time to process this, to figure out what I want. "Take all the time you need," she said softly. "I'll be here for you, whatever you decide." As I watched the kids play, I realized that the path to healing would be long and difficult, but for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The next few weeks were a time of reflection and soul-searching. I spent time with the kids, focused on my work, and continued my therapy sessions. Elijah remained supportive, respecting my need for space while making it clear that he was committed to making things right. One evening, as I was tucking the kids into bed, Emily looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. "Aunt Mia, is Mummy going to be okay?" I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "She's getting better every day, sweetheart, and we're all here to help her." She nodded, hugging her stuffed bunny tightly. "I love you, Aunt Mia." "I love you too." "Emily," I whispered, kissing her forehead. As I closed the door to her room, I felt a sense of determination. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the challenges ahead. With time, patience, and support, I believed that we could find a way to heal and move forward. One day at a time, we would rebuild the trust and love that had been tested but not destroyed. Months had passed since Elijah moved out and Harper made her shocking demand. The healing process was slow but steady. Every day brought new challenges but also new reasons to hope. I had come to realize that the journey to forgiveness and trust was long, but not impossible. One bright Saturday morning, I decided it was time to have a family meeting. Elijah had been coming around regularly to see the kids, and it was time we all sat down to talk about our future. I invited him over for breakfast. The kids were excited, running around the house as the smell of pancakes filled the air. When Elijah arrived, he looked nervous but hopeful. "Morning, Mia," he said softly, stepping into the kitchen. "Morning, Elijah. Have a seat." "Breakfast is almost ready," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. We sat around the table, the kids chattering happily. It almost felt like old times, but there was an underlying tension that couldn't be ignored. After we finished eating, I took a deep breath and looked at Elijah. "Elijah, I've been thinking a lot about everything I began. About us, about the kids, about what we need to do moving forward." He nodded, his eyes fixed on mine. "I understand, Mia. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." "I know you are," I said, feeling a surge of emotion, "and I believe you. But rebuilding trust takes time. We need to take it slow, for the sake of our family. He reached out and took my hand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Mia. I love you and the kids more than anything. I squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of relief. I know. And I love you too. That's why we need to start fresh. Not just pretend like nothing happened, but really work on our relationship. He nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. I agree. We can start by spending more time together as a family, and by being honest with each other about our feelings. I glanced at the kids, who were listening intently. We'll have family dinners, game nights, and make sure we're all on the same page, and we'll keep seeing our therapist, both individually and as a couple. The kids cheered at the mention of game nights, their faces lighting up with excitement. Elijah smiled, a look of gratitude in his eyes. That sounds perfect, he said. Thank you, Mia, for giving us another chance. It's not just about giving you another chance, I said gently. It's about all of us healing and growing stronger together. The next few weeks were filled with small but significant steps. Elijah and I started communicating more openly, sharing our fears, hopes, and dreams. We attended therapy sessions, which helped us understand each other better and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. One evening, after a particularly good session, we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Elijah turned to me, his expression serious. Mia, there's something I need to say, he began. What is it? I asked, feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I know I've said it before, but I need you to really hear me this time, he said, taking my hand. I'm so sorry for everything, for the pain I caused you, for the lies, for the betrayal. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and regret. I believe you, Elijah, and I forgive you. It's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to try. For us, for the kids. He smiled, tears brimming in his eyes. Thank you, Mia. That means more to me than you'll ever know. We hugged, a sense of peace and resolution settling over us. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild our lives on a foundation of honesty and love. As time went on, Harper's health continued to improve. She and I mended our friendship, acknowledging the mistakes we both made and choosing to move forward. Emily remained a beloved part of our extended family, and the kids grew closer, their bond unshakable. One sunny afternoon, we all gathered in the park for a picnic. The kids were playing a game of tag, their laughter filling the air. Harper and I sat on a blanket, watching them with smiles on our faces. I'm so glad we're here, together, Harper said, her eyes bright with happiness. Me too, I replied, feeling a deep sense of contentment. We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger. Thanks to you, she said, squeezing my hand. You never gave up on us, even when things were at their worst. We never gave up on each other, I corrected her, smiling. That's what friends do. As the sun began to set, Elijah joined us on the blanket, wrapping his arm around me. This is perfect, he said, looking around at our happy, blended family. It is, I agreed, resting my head on his shoulder. We've come a long way, and I'm grateful for every step. In that moment, I realized that despite all the pain and heartache, we had found a way to heal. Our journey wasn't over, but we were on the right path, one filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. We had faced our demons and emerged stronger, united by the bonds of family and friendship. And as long as we had each other, I knew we could face whatever challenges came our way. A year had passed since that fateful day when Harper's confession turned our lives upside down. As I stood in our backyard, watching the kids play, I felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. We had faced unimaginable challenges, but we had come out stronger on the other side. Elijah walked up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You look deep in thought, he said, kissing the top of my head. I was just thinking about everything we've been through, I replied, leaning back against him. It's amazing how far we've come. He nodded, his eyes following the kids as they ran around, laughing. We've come a long way, haven't we? I'm so grateful for this second chance, Mia. For us, for our family. Me too, I said, smiling. It wasn't easy, but we did it. Together. Harper and Emily arrived a few minutes later, joining us for a barbecue. Harper looked healthier and happier than I had seen her in years. She walked over to me, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Mia, I can't thank you enough for everything," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You saved my life, in more ways than one." I hugged her tightly. We saved each other, Harper, and we've got so much to look forward to. As we all sat down to eat, the conversation was filled with laughter and warmth. The kids told stories about school, their excitement bubbling over. Harper and Elijah shared a knowing smile, and I felt a deep sense of contentment. After dinner, as the sun began to set, I took a moment to reflect on the journey we had taken. The betrayal, the pain, the healing, it had all led us to this point. And through it all, we had learned the true meaning of resilience, forgiveness, and love. Later that evening, after everyone had left and the kids were in bed, Elijah and I sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet night. "Do you remember where we were a year ago?" I asked, looking up at the stars. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I do. It felt like everything was falling apart. But now it feels like we're stronger than ever." I took his hand, squeezing it gently. "We are. And it's because we never gave up. We faced our fears, our mistakes, and we chose to fight for our family." He smiled, a look of pride and love in his eyes. "You're my hero, Mia. You've shown me what true strength looks like." "You're my hero too," I said, leaning in for a kiss. "We've both grown so much, and I couldn't have done it without you." As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized that our story was one of triumph. We had faced the darkest of times and emerged into the light, stronger and more united than ever. Our journey had taught us that true strength lies in the willingness to forgive, to heal, and to move forward with hope. It had shown us that love, when tested, can become even more powerful. And it had proven that no matter how difficult the path, when we walk it together, there's nothing we can't overcome. In the end, we had created a new chapter in our lives, one filled with promise and possibility. And as I looked into Elijah's eyes, I knew that our story was far from over. We had many more adventures ahead, and we would face them all with the courage and love that had brought us this far. Together, we had become heroes of our own story, and our future was brighter than ever. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.